Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. I'm going to give time for more participants to join us. While we continue to have people join us, I'm going to quickly do some polls to get some more information about who's here in the audience. We'll start with a background poll, just asking who you are. Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? An older student? That way we can tailor parts of our presentation today to make sure we're meeting your needs. For those of you just joining, welcome. My name is Betty Baez. I'm with Advocates for Children of New York. We're giving some time for people to continue to join the presentation. In the meantime, please answer the poll that's up. It'll give us more information about who's out here in the audience so that I can tailor portions of our PowerPoint today to make sure we're addressing your needs. While you're working on the poll and while more people come in, just so you know, we are recording this webinar. We will send you a link to the recording afterwards, probably within the next couple of days, so that you have it to reference it in case there are any parts that you want to go back to, or in case there's anything that you want to share with other people. Throughout the webinar, your cameras will be off, you will be on mute, but please do ask us questions using the Q&A function. We will pause throughout the presentation or I will pause throughout the presentation to review those questions and answer them live. Also have some colleagues who are managing the Q&A and can respond in real time. It looks like most of you who are here already have responded to the first poll, and thank you. It sounds like most people, 98% of people who are participating right now are parents. That's great. Most of the presentation is already tailored towards parents. And so we're going to try to make it as easy for you to understand. And knowing full well that you should know that you do have more experience maybe than you think. The fact that your child already has a preschool IEP means that you've been through this process and understand a lot of the terms and a lot of the different actors and players who are involved. So we'll go to a next poll now to see where you're joining us from, to see which borough you live in. And while you're filling out this poll, in addition to flagging again the Q&A for any questions that you have throughout the presentation, want to let you know that there are subtitles available. So if you would like to be able to see the subtitles throughout the presentation, within that taskbar that Zoom has, there are the 3 dots with the more option. The option for subtitles is available there. If you have any questions or any challenges finding that, you can please put those questions in the Q&A. Okay, looks like we have most of the people who are participating have answered the poll, and the majority, more than half, are joining us from Brooklyn. Welcome. We do have representation from at least 4 boroughs, which is great. I'm doing this presentation from Brooklyn as well. So everything within the presentation is focused on New York City with not really borough-specific information. Because it is pretty standard practice throughout the city. So there shouldn't be any issues depending on people living in different areas. So let's get started. Thank you for being on time. As I said, my name is Betty Baez. I'm an attorney with Advocates for Children. I lead our early childhood education project. Today's training is focused on the Turning 5 process. That's the transition from preschool to kindergarten for students with developmental delays and disabilities. Today's focus is on developing the kindergarten IEP. We are doing a series of webinars throughout the months of December and January with different focuses on the Turning 5, on this transition. So we'll just flag for you that there is a separate companion webinar that we are doing on the kindergarten application process. So if you have not participated in one of those, do recommend that you sign up if you want more information about applying to schools, including DOE public schools as well as charter schools. We also have a couple of Q&A sessions, including a Q&A session that will take place this Friday. That'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions that potentially we're not able to answer today. It is a different format. It's not presentation-based. You will be on camera and live and able to speak, and really more of like a forum to answer those questions. Okay, and so with that, we'll get started. Just first to focus on a quick overview and make sure we're all at the right place. So the transition to kindergarten, as I mentioned, is for the families of preschool students with disabilities who will be transitioning to kindergarten next year. All children who were born in 2017 have the right to a public school kindergarten seat in September of 2022. For students with disabilities, they have to go through 2 processes this year in order to have the appropriate school next year and the appropriate program and services. So the first process is a kindergarten IEP. This is the process that we will focus the presentation on today. Again, also referred to as the Turning 5 process. This school year, the DOE will develop the IEP that your child should have in place for September of 2022. For some families, that may mean that you're having 2 IEP meetings this year, your child's last preschool IEP and their first kindergarten IEP meeting. If your child does not have a preschool IEP, if your child is not a student with disability, this may not be the right presentation for you. You may want to be more focused on kindergarten admissions or the process for applying to DOE schools. Or if you have any questions about how to develop a preschool IEP, you should contact us separately. We will not be focusing on the preschool IEP during this presentation. The kindergarten admissions process is the process of applying to DOE schools. You will also have the opportunity this year to apply to charter schools and potentially to different types of specialized schools or private schools. And we'll mention some of those briefly throughout the presentation. Again, we have a separate webinar that focuses on the kindergarten admissions process. So we'll not be covering that process in today's presentation. But please go back to our website, sign up, and feel free to attend one of those webinars going forward. Okay. So a quick overview, what we will be discussing today, and there is a lot. So hopefully not laying this out to overwhelm you, but just to give you a little bit of a groundwork of everything we will be covering. Please do not worry, we will be sending you a copy of this presentation, including the slides and the recording of this presentation, as well as different materials that we have, including our guide on the Turning 5 process. And if you have any questions afterwards, you can continue to contact us, you can attend a Q&A session, and you can sign up for future webinars as well. So we will start with a brief introduction, then we'll jump right into the legal rights of students, families, and students with disabilities. preparing for the IEP meeting, steps that you can start taking now, even though your child's IEP meeting is not yet scheduled, understanding the different components of the IEP so that you're prepared for the meeting, program and service options, so different types of classrooms that are available and services that are available in those classrooms. Communication, primarily communication between the DOE and you, things that they will be mailing out and things to look for this year. Briefly, we'll go over applying to kindergarten, but again, the focus of that, we have a whole other webinar dedicated to just that one area. So it'll just be a brief overview and ending with resources. Throughout the presentation, I will be pausing to see if we have any questions through the Q&A. So please continue to use that function so that I can see if there are any questions coming up. So the introduction to AFC. AFC is an independent agency that protects the rights of all New York City students. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We were founded in 1971 by a group of parents of students with disabilities. And throughout the years, throughout the 50 years, our mission has really expanded to be inclusive of protecting the rights of all New York City students. But we still do some specialized work around special education. And this is one example, really targeted workshops and webinars, as well as advocacy around special education. Some of the services that we offer, we have a helpline. You can reach it at 1-866-427-6033. Our helpline is open Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you do not get through, please leave a voicemail message. Our goal is to get back to families within a couple of days. It is a free of charge service. Anyone can call, parent or professional. And we also have, different interpretation and advocates that speak other languages. So really try to be as inclusive as possible. We offer free legal services to low-income families. We have limited capacity to do that, and most of our cases are assigned legal representation through our helpline. So that really is kind of the main intake process and way for you to get additional information or consultation with someone at AFC. We offer guides and resources that are available on our website. We will send you the specific guides and resources that are relevant to this presentation after the webinar. We have workshops and trainings. Currently, they're mostly taking place online by Zoom, much as this one, for children born in 2017 who will be going to kindergarten next year. In addition to this webinar, we have the webinar on applying to schools, and we have the Q&A sessions, and all of that information is also on our website. And finally, we do policy, advocacy, and impact litigation. So to really try to work and make services better for all students and not just on a case-by-case basis, but really trying to reform things within the city and the state. So as I said, we will jump straight into the law related to students with disabilities. And I don't want to scare you. Hopefully this is not intimidating when you hear that we will be talking about the law. Generally, we will try to keep the law to one really important sentence. And so basically with the Law of Students with Disabilities, it's the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And what it says is that all children through the age of 21 with a disability have a right to a free, appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, in the least restrictive environment, or LRE. So I did say it in one sentence, but as lawyers, there's a lot that we can break down within all of these terms and really what it means. But just generally, to give you a better sense of what we're saying, free, appropriate public education. Some of these terms are pretty straightforward, right? Every child has access to a public school seat. If a public school seat is not appropriate for a student, if it's not an option that would allow that student to make meaningful progress, then that means that there may be ways for a parent to secure payment for private services or private schools. In the least restrictive environment really refers to the extent possible, wanting students with disabilities to learn alongside their typically developing peers, or to students without disabilities. That is to say, within FAPE and LRE, within the free appropriate education in the least restrictive environment, all of these determinations are really specific to the individual child. So least restrictive for one child may mean that they are in a general education program where they receive related services like speech therapy and physical therapy, but for the most part spend the day in a classroom, a general education classroom with a general education teacher. For other students, the least restrictive for them is a class that is of all students with disabilities, with a special education teacher, with a small student to teacher ratio, right? It is very dependent on that individual child. And most significantly, we come back to the term of what's appropriate. And what's appropriate for that child is an environment that allows them to make meaningful progress. Now we give you kind of these definitions, not to limit you, not so that you're not at an IEP meeting advocating for your child or asking for the best, but really so that you understand the language and the reasoning behind some of the decisions that the DOE will be making, or at least some of the factors that they're considering. And I find that it is helpful for families to understand these terms so that they can go into an IEP meeting and advocate with these terms in mind, right? So sometimes, for example, we hear from families who would prefer that their child is in an integrated classroom with children who have IEPs and children who do not have IEPs, whereas the DOE may be recommending a more restrictive special class placement. For those families, it could be really helpful to say, my child has the right to the least restrictive environment. We should first try to pursue this integrated class. And that's just one example. We'll come back to these points and what they mean throughout the presentation. And again, if you have any specific questions on it, please put them in the Q&A. Okay. So just a quick recap to see if you're paying attention. And because this is such a crucial term, we're going to do a quick poll. An appropriate education means one that allows the student to A, reach their full potential, B, make meaningful progress, C, make any amount of progress, or D, it depends on what the school has available. And I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. Okay, it looks like everyone who answered or was going to answer has, so we'll just go over the results. Looks pretty evenly split between people saying that an appropriate education is one that allows a child to reach their full potential and one that allows a child to make meaningful progress. But there were kind of answers across the board. The correct answer is B, appropriate. An appropriate education is one that allows a child to make meaningful progress. This is language that has or kind of been defined throughout various legal cases, but the most recent legal case by the Supreme Court really kind of helped define and hone in, and they made clear that it's not just any progress, it's not just any small amount of progress that will be considered sufficient to be deemed an appropriate education. Instead, you really need to look at the individual student, their capacity, their ability, and their needs, and judge if that child has been able to make meaningful progress. And by meaningful, really look at their IEP goals. Is the child meeting those IEP goals? Are they making progress year through year? Are there changes being made to their IEP recommendation because of it? And comparing it to general education students who year to year, you want to see that they've been able to go from grade to grade, and in doing so, kind of making that educational progress with grades and going up grade levels. Unfortunately, the law does not entitle children to an education, to the best education, or to the education that allowed them to reach their full potential. And again, I make this distinction not so you're not advocating for more for your child or what you believe is the best for your child, but so that you have the language and are considering phrasing it as what you may want to say, like, this is the best program for my child. Consider if that's actually the most appropriate program for your child and reasons why. Reasons why other programs wouldn't be sufficient to allow your child to make meaningful progress. Okay. But glad to see the fact that there were so many different responses, like, helps me understand that it may be an area of continued confusion, but glad that we're kind of emphasizing that definition. Okay. So what is an IEP? We're focused today on developing your child's kindergarten IEP. You should all be familiar to some extent with the IEP, with an individualized education program, because your child currently should have a preschool IEP. That's how they are identified as a preschool student with disability and how they are currently receiving preschool special education services. The kindergarten IEP is very similar in many ways, especially primarily in these ways, in that it's individualized. It is specific to your child, based on your child's abilities, based on your child's needs, but their present levels of performance, and that's gathered through evaluations. It's gathered through performance reports. It's also gathered through just information that you share about your child and what they do well and where they need more help. The IEP is legally binding. It is like a contract. Everything on the IEP must be given to the student and should and must be provided in the frequency that is outlined in the IEP. So for example, if your child's IEP recommends speech therapy 3 times a week individually, they should receive speech therapy 3 times a week individually, say for 30 minutes or whatever's on the IEP. And not just change to twice a week for 45 minutes, depending on provider availability. Definitely shouldn't be made, that change shouldn't be made without a discussion with you and without your consent. The IEP is created at an IEP meeting, and we will discuss for the most part today what happens at the kindergarten IEP meeting. This is a meeting that you should attend. You are a primary person at that IEP meeting, you play a key role. And because of that, you are entitled to notice of the IEP meeting beforehand. And the IEP is good for 1 year. That doesn't mean that if an IEP is not working out well for your child, that you cannot request a new IEP meeting sooner. But does mean that it should be reviewed every year, and that you can anticipate that the services will remain in place for at least that year. And so, sometimes parents, especially leading up to the kindergarten IEP, are really worried about, is this going to be the IEP that's going to be in place throughout my child's elementary school career or years? And no, it will be reviewed, as I mentioned, at least once a year, or it should be reviewed at least once a year. And you can always request a new IEP meeting before that time if your child is not making progress, or if you receive new evaluations or request new evaluations because you have new areas of concern. Okay, so preparing for the IEP meeting, there are a few key players, and we'll go through kind of all of them. Focusing on the DOE, your child's preschool, and things that you can do beforehand. And there's going to be a lot to cover, so sorry, I'm just looking down. So starting with the DOE. The DOE already this year should have sent you what's called a welcome packet, which is on yellow paper, at least some of it is on yellow paper, letting you know that they have identified your child as being born in 2017, as being a preschool student with a disability, and letting you that throughout this year, they will be working on creating a kindergarten IEP for your child. So they are really responsible to oversee that transition from preschool to kindergarten and to guide you along the way. Soon in late December, but usually in January and February, you will receive an additional letter from the DOE called a notice of referral. This is a really key letter in that it includes the name of the district representative who will be overseeing your child's IEP meeting. This is also the person who will be reaching out to you beforehand to discuss progress reports that they are collecting from your child's preschool, as well as to discuss any evaluations or new assessments that they may need to conduct this year for your child. The DOE can rely on the child's preschool evaluations, as well as the updated progress reports and updated social history from talking to you. But if you feel that there are new assessments, are necessary, if, for example, your child was never evaluated for speech therapy, but now you have a concern about speech delays, you can request that from the DOE. Or if your child had an existing evaluation that you feel is no longer accurate and isn't being reflected in any of the progress reports, then you can request a new evaluation as well from the DOE. And so you would be having those conversations with the DOE district representative. And so that's why it's very important to look out for that letter, for that notice of referral later this winter. Okay. Once a case is assigned, just to give you a sense of the timeline, for the most part, IEP meetings will start taking place or be scheduled some point in February and really ramp up in March, April, and May. So there's still some time to go before then. But like I said, one of the key things is to maintain communication with the DOE, especially once you have that district representative assigned. If you have not received any mail from the Department of Education so far, if you have not received that welcome packet, by the way, that welcome packet also included a flyer for different trainings and workshops that the DOE is doing on the transition. There are still some scheduled for December and January that we will mention later on in the presentation. But if you haven't received that mailing, and if you've changed your address recently, do recommend that you contact your CPSC administrator or contact your child's preschool to let them know you have had a change of address, to make sure that the DOE is updating their records so that you will get mail throughout this process, because it does become more crucial to have everything. You can also opt in this year to have documents sent by email instead of by physical, by post. So you can sign a consent form to do that as well. Your child's preschool. Your child's preschool, apart from you, knows your child better than anyone else within the Department of Education or within this process, right? They are the ones spending, if your child's attending preschool, they are the ones who are spending all school days, right? But several hours every day of the week, which is more than anyone will spend conducting one given evaluation or conducting, a classroom observation, for example. So I say all that because we want them to play a role, right? We want to hear from the preschool how your child is doing. Part of this is already in place. Preschools are required, and preschool special education programs in particular, but also related service providers are required to provide the DOE progress reports by the start of February 2022. So before your child's IEP meeting, they are required to write up reports, letting the DOE know the progress that your child is making. What are they able to do right now? Where do they still need support? How have they been doing in achieving their IEP goals, their preschool IEP goals? And that'll obviously influence the recommendations that are made at the IEP meeting. The preschool is usually also involved in helping you understand this process and prepare for IEP meetings. Unfortunately, this year with the pandemic, we understand that there's less face-to-face contact between parents and teachers and providers. But do feel free to ask your preschool questions about how your child is progressing and if they have any particular recommendations for kindergarten. If your child has a special education teacher, that preschool special education teacher should be participating in your child's IEP meeting. And do recommend that you talk to the teacher beforehand just to see if you're on the same page. If you think, for example, your child would do better in a larger or smaller classroom than the one they're in now, if they need more intensive supports or less supports, if there are any specific classroom management strategies that may work well. Is it better when the child is sitting at the front of the room? Is it better when they're in the back of the room? Having specific things taught in small groups. All of that is really valuable information that can be discussed at the IEP meeting. And your role, as I mentioned, you are a key member of the IEP team and can play a huge role in preparing for the IEP meeting and participating in the IEP meeting. One key way to start is by understanding the process and knowing your options. So congratulations, that is underway. You're here now. So you're already getting in the process of preparing for the IEP meeting. Unfortunately, there are limited options, as I mentioned, for in-school visits and tours. I mentioned that with preschool, but it's also true for kindergarten programs. So a lot of the understanding your options this year will be by either online research or by calling programs and trying to schedule potentially in-person visits or see if they're doing any type of virtual tours. And do recommend that you explore options just so that you understand the range of different programs and services available. We'll discuss a lot of them today, but it's different to see them sometimes, live or hands-on, and to get more in-depth information about a particular placement from the staff who work there. Before the IEP meeting, as I said, the preschool will be preparing documents due on February 1st. The DOE may be conducting evaluations. Do recommend that you get copies of all of those reports. You're entitled to copies of them. If they have not been provided, you should ask the DOE district representative for them so that you have a chance to review them beforehand, see if you're in agreement or in disagreement with anything. If your child needs medical services, or may need medical accommodations like a one-to-one nurse or specific accommodations for busing, including a limited travel time, or may need a paraprofessional on the bus, or just different types of accommodations, do recommend that you get medical paperwork filled out by your doctor before the IEP meeting and can give those to the DOE beforehand, because some of them do require review from the Office of Student Health before they are added to your child's IEP. So, as soon as you get a district representative assigned to your child's case, you can start that conversation and, scheduling any appointments necessary so that you have the medical paperwork filled out beforehand. I know sometimes it can be challenging to get a doctor's appointment quickly. IEP meetings will be taking place remotely this year. That doesn't mean that you're not still entitled to advance notice. You're a key member of the IEP meeting and we want to make sure you're there. If it's scheduled at a time that's not convenient for you, you can ask the DOE to reschedule. And finally, before the IEP meeting, do recommend you spend some time potentially, talking to your child's preschool to see if you're on the same page, but also making a list of the things that you find are the most important or that you want to make sure are addressed during the IEP meeting, including any concerns that you have or things you want to highlight that your child does well, any questions you have about programs that may be recommended or services that you believe your child should receive. It can become overwhelming at an IEP meeting and easy for you to lose track. So if you have that jotted down beforehand, it can help keep you focused throughout the meeting. Sometimes the DOE district rep will play a very active role and lead the entire conversation, but it could happen sometimes in a way where the family or the parent doesn't feel that they have a moment to step in and to ask questions. So usually we found that it helps if the parent comes with their list prepared and has time to address them during the IEP meeting. Okay. So that was a lot. I'm going to pause now to see if there are any questions. Oops, sorry. So one of the questions we received is about schools being accessible versus not accessible. That really is the focus of the kindergarten admissions process webinar. A fully accessible school is one, or accessible is defined by whether the school is supportive of students with impairments, including visual impairments, hearing impairments, or physical impairments, including use of a wheelchair that impede their ability to safely navigate different spaces. A fully accessible school means that it is supportive of students with all needs, and so may mean that the school is on just one level, or that the school has an elevator or other supports to help students safely navigate the space. All schools will indicate or should indicate if they're fully, partially, or non-accessible. There's more information and resources about where you can find that information. As I said, we focus on it on the other webinar. If your child needs an accessible school, that is something that you can and should mention at the IEP meeting. It's also something that you can and should indicate when you apply to kindergarten. Are district's representatives different from CPSE administrators? Yes, district representatives or CPSE administrators focus on supporting your child's preschool IEP and ensuring that your child's preschool program and service recommendations are in place. The district representative who will be assigned to your child's kindergarten IEP team is not, is focused on kindergarten and is most likely going to be someone that works at your child's zone school or another elementary school or public school within your area. Sometimes cases are assigned to CSEs, to Committee on Special Education. If that is the case, it will not be the Committee on Preschool Special Education. It will not be the CPSE, but another office within the same building called the CSE. So it will definitely be a different person than the one you've been working with throughout the preschool process. And who is your district representative or Turning 5 contact? You will get that information when the DOE sends you the notice of referral. The notice of referral, the earliest that the DOE has sent them is in December. We anticipate that they will be sent. Right now, they're doing some case assignments and anticipate that they will send the notice of, of recommendation of referral. We'll send that to you in January. So do start looking out for those. Then if you have not received a notice of referral by February 1st, for example, it could be that the DOE does not have your correct contact information. So for that, you should contact your CPSE administrator to make sure they're updating records and can get you that information. You can also contact your child's preschool to see if they can help you update your child's information. And finally, you can contact the DOE central office at Turning 5 at schools.nyc.gov. We have that email address later on in the presentation, and I can flag it for you. But that is a DOE inbox that you can contact with any questions about the transition from preschool to kindergarten. So if you have not gotten the notice of referral by February and you're concerned, you can email the DOE to let them know that your child is transitioning this year and you'd like to be put in touch with that person, if your child's district representative. Okay, that looks like all the questions we've gotten so far. So we'll move on to the IEP meeting. Okay, so who is at the IEP meeting? You've hopefully have all been to IEP meetings because your child has a preschool IEP. So even if those meetings have been over the phone because of the pandemic, hopefully you've been able to gauge from the call who all has been present. So the key person, as I keep mentioning, are you, the parents. Because you're a key player, you have a right to 5 days written notice before the IEP meeting. If the date and time is not convenient for you, you can ask the DOE to reschedule the meeting. But do please follow up and ask them to reschedule. Don't just, say don't call, not call in, but actually contact them and let them know you'd like it to be rescheduled. Who else is at the meeting? The special education teacher. If your child has a preschool special education teacher, it is that special education teacher who should be at the meeting. And that includes a special education teacher who's the classroom teacher, and also includes SEIT, so special education itinerant service teacher, who could be a special education teacher who works one-on-one with your child for some, but not the full day. There should be a general education teacher at this meeting as well. And this is primarily if the student is or may be considered for a general education classroom. There should be a school psychologist. This is the person that explains the evaluations or can work on changing the program recommendation and setting and discuss those different options with you. There should be a district representative. This person knows the services that are available in the district. Now, your child's recommendation should not be made based on what's available, but it is helpful to have the district representative be able to explain different options. Finally, there is room for other persons, and this includes interpreters for families who speak a language other than English, but it's also a broad category that gives you leeway in case you want to invite other people to participate in the IEP meeting as well. So for example, for children who are medically fragile or may need a lot of medical accommodations, you could consider whether it's possible to have your child's pediatrician call in. If you've received any private evaluations that you're giving copies to the DOE and you'd like considered, you could think through whether you would like to request that evaluator call in and be able to participate in the meeting. It could also be, if your child's grandparent is one of the primary caretakers of your child and is supportive, or helping you in raising the child, do you want the grandparent to participate in the IEP meeting? Really it's based on somebody who has knowledge of your child and is interested in participating in the IEP meeting to support your child or even to support you. If you want to have an advocate, you can also request that an advocate participate in the IEP meeting. We do recommend that you give the DOE notice beforehand, especially if you need an interpreter as well, to let them know that you are asking for this additional person to be present. Okay. And just as a reminder, because of the pandemic throughout this year, IEP meetings will also be taking place over the phone. You should ask if everyone is not already identifying themselves. You can ask that everyone on the call identify themselves so you get a sense of who's participating in the meeting. You should know that sometimes one person plays multiple roles. So for example, a general education teacher may also play the role as the district representative, or the school psychologist may also play the role of the district representative. So there may not necessarily be 5 or 6 people on the call. It may depend on the role that everyone is playing. Okay, so another quick poll or survey. Who is not a required member of the IEP team? Okay, it looks like most people have participated and the overwhelming majority of you got this answer correct. Your child's pediatrician. This is a person who's not a required member of the IEP team. They are not required to participate in the IEP meeting. It is someone you don't even have to invite to the IEP meeting. You may want to get medical paperwork completed by the doctor and submitted beforehand, particularly if you're looking for any medical accommodations for your child. But the focus of the IEP meeting are educational services and educational programs and not the medical needs. And so a pediatrician is not a required member. You, the parent, are a required member. Your child's special education teacher, if they have one, they are a required member of the IEP team. That includes CIT teachers and also your child's preschool classroom teacher. And a DOE district representative is required to participate in the meeting. And again, that DOE district representative may be wearing multiple hats. We're playing various roles at the meeting, but one of those roles that the person will be playing will be as the representative. So moving on. Another key part of the IEP and of the IEP meeting is the determination of a child's classification. For preschool, all preschool students have the same classification, which is a preschool student with a disability. For kindergarten, there are 13 specific classifications available. Every child will only receive one classification, even if they may meet multiple definitions or have multiple needs that are outlined here. So the classification is one key distinction, and want you to be aware that it may be one of the first things discussed at your child's IEP meeting. The classification is also how it's determined that a child is eligible for preschool, for kindergarten or school age special education services. A child is eligible if they meet one of the different classifications. As I mentioned, there's only one classification per child. The classification does not determine your child's services. So for example, if your child needs speech therapy, they can receive speech therapy even if they're classified as having an emotional disturbance. They do not need to be classified as a child with a speech or language impairment. Something that I will raise, I mean, you can review the terms here, you can see them on your own. One thing that I do usually flag for families, for children who are diagnosed with ADHD, many of them are classified as a child with an other health impairment. And for children who are diagnosed with autism, even if they have other diagnoses, that is generally the classification that the DOE will use on your child's IEP, even though the classification does not determine or drive the program and services. There are some programs that are specific to children with different classifications. And for children with autism or students with autism, there are some additional services recommended, including parent counseling and training. And so that is something that needs to be recommended for all children with the autism classification, whereas that's not typically a service recommended for children or students with the other classifications. We have more information about what these specific classifications mean, how they're defined in our Turning 5 guide, and we will be providing you a link to that guide with the resources that we send you after the presentation. So other important sections of the IEP, and sometimes the DOE will follow this order. It's the order that the IEP is written in, and sometimes they will follow this order at the IEP meeting. So key section is the present levels of performance. This section is determined based on kind of various different sources, but it includes the results of evaluations. It includes the progress reports that your child's preschool providers are developing. It includes anything from independent evaluations that you choose to share with the Department of Education, or private evaluations that you choose to share with the Department of Education. It also includes what you observe from your child, both what you're seeing at home, but what you know of how your child is performing in school. There are even specific sections throughout the IEP that reference, parents' areas of concern. If there are things that you disagree with throughout the IEP meeting, you should feel comfortable in raising those throughout the meeting. And you can even ask the DOE to make sure that they're noting that within the IEP. Other key sections are annual goals. As I said, the IEP is reviewed annually and it's good for a year. At your child's kindergarten IEP meeting, which again will be taking place later this winter or early spring, you're looking at goals that your child should be able to achieve by the end of kindergarten, right? And so you're thinking, you're pretty forward thinking. We recommend that as everything in the IEP, that the annual goals be specific to your child. So not just, what should a kindergarten student be able to do at the end of kindergarten, but what should your child be able to do? And to make the goals both specific and measurable. And what that means is that you want to be able to read the goal and see if your child has made progress and has achieved that goal. So for example, we don't want a goal that in 1 year, Jason will be a better reader. That doesn't tell me what Jason's able to do now, or how are we going to define better? It doesn't really help indicate what Jason will be able to do. A better goal is, in 1 year, Jason will be able to identify all letters of the alphabet in uppercase and lowercase. Or if Jason is more advanced, then in 1 year, Jason will be able to identify 15 three-letter words or 15 sight words. So you can clearly see, has Jason been, can he recognize all the letters? Is he struggling with letters B and D and P and D? Or has Jason exceeded the goal and is able to read 20 psych words? That's what we mean by specific and measurable, that it really helps you as a parent specifically get a better understanding and be able to see year by year if your child's making progress. The recommended program refers to the classroom that the DOE will be recommending for your child. We'll go over in detail what different program options are. That also has to do with the least restrictive environment that we discussed at the very beginning of the presentation. The IEP will also include the related services and supports that will be recommended for your child next year. And as I mentioned, throughout the IEP, there is an area for parent concerns. Okay, and we're going to go over most of these now in kind of more detail, starting with the program recommendations. Okay. So programs are recommended. We're going to start with called like a continuum of services, or the program continuum, and we're going to start with the least restrictive. And just as a reminder, least restrictive really focuses on, to the extent possible, students with disabilities learning alongside their typically developing peers. So the least restrictive program option is a general education program with supports and services, meaning that a child is in a general education classroom for most of the day. For kindergarten, that's a classroom of about 25 students and one general education teacher. The supports and the services that a child may receive throughout the day include SETS, or special education teacher support services, which is a special education teacher that can work one-on-one or in a small group with your child for some portions throughout the day, or several times a week to really enhance and support the child's learning needs, as well as different types of related services. The most common ones being, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and counseling. A little bit more restrictive is integrated co-teaching. This is a classroom that includes both students with and without IEPs. It is a classroom that is taught by a special education teacher and a general education teacher. The special education teacher may work with the students throughout the full day or just come in for certain parts of the day to emphasize different subject areas, or to support different subject areas. It is a larger class. It is the same size for the most part as the general education classroom, so about 25 students. The goal is that when looking into the classroom, if you're just peering in from a window, you shouldn't be able to see or make out who are the students with IEPs and who are not. It really is meant to be an integrated model where the students are learning alongside each other throughout the day, but the special education students do have that additional support from the special education teacher. And finally, we have a special class in a non-specialized school. This is also known as a 12 to 1 to 1 or 12 to 1 class, 12 referring to 12 students, 1 being a special education teacher. If there's an additional one, that is a teaching assistant or classroom paraprofessional. This is also sometimes referred to as a self-contained classroom. All the children in this classroom are children with IEPs, and they're students who need additional support throughout the day from a special education teacher throughout the day, and may need additional either supports with learning or supports with their behavior. The smaller classroom also allows for limited distractions and more ability to really tailor lesson plans for each individual student's needs. All the programs that are listed on this slide are programs that are available in all DOE public school classrooms, or all DOE non-specialized District 1 through 32 schools. These are the same schools that you would be or should be applying to through the DOE kindergarten admissions process. So many times we get questions from parents about how do I know which school will meet my child's needs. according to the DOE, all the schools can meet your child's needs if your child's IEP recommends or you believe will recommend any of these program options. That is generally true, but not always true. And so we'll get to later in the discussion what to do if the school that you applied to and the school that made you an offer does not have the services your child needs. Most commonly where we may see that is for the self-contained classrooms. Not every school in practice has a kindergarten special class. And so again, it's just really important to make sure that you are monitoring throughout the year and after your child's IEP meeting, once you receive your placement offer, making sure that the school will have the services that your child needs. Now, we will keep going through the continuum with these schools being, or with these programs being outside of the DOE non-specialized schools. And again, we're continuing to get what's considered more restrictive. So all the programs on this page will refer to programs that are just for students with IEPs. So we'll start with a special class in a specialized school. The DOE public specialized schools for district students with disabilities are called District 75 schools or District 75 programs. As I mentioned, all children in these programs are students with IEPs. All the teachers that work in these schools or in these programs are special education teachers. There are different ratios, and these different ratios serve students with different profiles. So there is a 12 to 1 to 1 program, an 8 to 1 to 1, a 6 to 1 to 1, and a 12 to 1 to 4. Again, that refers to the students, the teacher, and paraprofessionals or teaching assistants available for the classroom. Just some quick notes on some of these programs, and we go over in more detail the characteristics of each one and the profile of students that they serve in our Turning 5 guide that you will receive after the presentation. The 12 to 1 to 4 program is commonly recommended for students with multiple disabilities. These are students with severe and multiple disabilities with limited language, academic, and independent functioning. These are students who need a lot of hands-on support. That's why there's such a high ratio of adults in the classroom with these students. The 6 to 1 to 1 program is generally recommended for children with significant autism. It doesn't mean it only serves children with autism or that it should be the only program recommended for children with autism, but it is children who have very significant needs, again, including in academic, social, interpersonal, often for children who potentially may be nonverbal or just starting to be verbal. Students may have really severe difficulties in their language skills and require really intensive supports and therapies throughout the day, as compared to a 12 to 1 to 1 program, which is, it's hard to compare to the 12 to 1 to 1 in the non-specialized school, except to say that it's students who need additional support than the ones in the non-specialized school, be that with academic or be that with behavior. Okay. Getting a bit more restrictive, there's the state-approved non-public schools. These are not DOE schools. These are private or non-public schools, but that are approved by the state Department of Education to provide special education services for students. So these schools can be, or these programs can be recommended on a child's IEP, and the DOE would cover tuition and funding for your child's placement there. The NPSs serve all students with disabilities, and they serve students, all the teachers or special education teachers. One way in that it differs, NPSs differ from District 75 programs, is that for many NPSs or most NPSs serve children with specific classifications. So they will only accept students who for example, are classified as children who have autism or who have autism and speech and language impairment. Others focus on students with emotional disturbance. And that's because they have developed expertise in serving students with specific needs and specific abilities. So we commonly hear from parents who prefer the NPS placement and are seeking an NPS placement for kindergarten. What we recommend for those parents before the IEP meeting, visit NPS programs, but also visit or get more information about District 75 programs, identify the differences in both and why one would be more appropriate for your child than the other. Some schools will also give you a conditional acceptance letter, which basically says that if the DOE were to recommend an NPS on your child's IEP, that they've already screened your child, have found them acceptable, and would give them a placement offer. If a school does that for you, recommend bringing that letter to the IEP meeting in support of the NPS being appropriate for your child, and also to show you've done the legwork and you're making it easy for the DOE. You've already identified the appropriate school placement. Getting a little bit more restrictive, there's residential placement. This is for students who require services on a 24-hour basis. We don't see this frequently for children entering kindergarten. And there's also home instruction for students with severe physical, medical, or an emotional condition that does not allow them to go to school in person. This year, we've seen an increase in recommendation for home instruction, primarily from parents who are opting or choosing for home instruction because of the ongoing pandemic. It has been one mechanism by which certain students, if they qualify, have been able to continue receiving services remotely or in the home throughout this year, even though services are primarily being done in person in a classroom. Again, if you have any questions about any of these programs, please put them in the Q&A, but also know that we will be providing more information in our Turning 5 guide. Another quick survey to make sure I still have you. If a child's preschool IEP recommends a special class, then the DOE must recommend a District 75 program as their kindergarten placement. Please say if this is true or false. I really want to build in a way to add music to this part of the presentation while you're answering the survey questions. It looks like we have a good number of responses. The majority of people answered false, and that is correct. I just first want to start with, there are no kind of automatic recommendations. There shouldn't be anything automatic that because your child had this recommendation for preschool, it means that the DOE has to recommend something for kindergarten. Again, it's based on each individual child's needs and how that child, the progress the child has made or the additional supports that that child continues to need. The reason I did ask this question though is I think there is a lot of misunderstanding sometimes from the DOE that they have to recommend a District 75 placement before they can consider recommending other types of placements, including an NPS placement. That's not the case. There's no wait and see option. There's no, I have to make this recommendation before we can consider anything else, or you have to wait at least a year before we can consider anything else. That's just inaccurate. What you should be prepared to do is, the DOE won't recommend an NPS, for example, a non-public school, unless there's been a determination that the public school options are not appropriate for your child. Because again, the NPS is considered more restrictive than the public school programs. So part of the way to overcome that One could be, by talking to your child's preschool teachers who may also have experience with District 75 or an understanding of what those programs offer, and can with you educate the DOE representative at the meeting about why a District 75 program wouldn't be appropriate. For some children, it is, and you may be requesting that type of program at the IEP meeting. But it shouldn't be because somebody's saying that's default or that's required. So there are kind of, just to make you aware of your rights and suggest different ways that you can prepare for that. You may also have evaluations or private evaluations or independent evaluations that suggest that your child needs something a bit more specialized for students with emotional disturbance, for children with specific behavioral needs. And if the DOE is not able to provide that support in a public school placement or in a District 75 placement, then you can use that to explore the NPS option. And similarly, if your child attended a preschool special class, let's say a 12 to 1-to-1, but it's done really well, and you believe your child can do better in a larger classroom or would be better served in an ICT, if an ICT is what's appropriate, you can use that to advocate for a change in placement to an ICT program at the IEP meeting. And remember to say that the least restrictive program, least restrictive option should be considered for your child. Okay. So now we're going to continue to discuss different types of programs, focusing on specialized programs. The ones that I'll be listing on this page are available in some, but not all, DOE District 1 through 32 non-specialized schools. So they are still in those non-specialized schools that also serve students without disabilities, but these are programs that these are the special education programs that are found in some of these schools. We'll start with bilingual ICT or special class. These are similar to the special class and ICT that I described in the previous slides, except with the exception that bilingual means that students are learning both in English and in a home language or in a second language. It doesn't matter whether or not a child's zone school or the school that is conducting your child's IEP meeting has this type of program available. Again, the decision about whether to recommend this program, if your child needs it, is based on your child's needs and not what's available in the community. If a bilingual ICT or special class is recommended for your child, then the DOE is responsible for identifying a school that can offer your child that program. So for bilingual ICT and special class, there's not a separate application process. Again, if the IEP recommends it, the DOE is required to identify a program. The ASD, NEST, and Horizon programs, these are specialized programs for children who have autism. ASD, NEST is a special type of ICT class or a special type of integrated class where students with disabilities learn alongside children without disabilities. All the students with disabilities in the NEST program are children classified as children with autism. For the most part, these classes are for very high functioning students with autism, students who are above or at grade level. The program is very competitive in that there are a few seats and many families interested. Every year, more families apply than receive a seat in the ASD NEST program. The ASD Horizon program, again, also for children with disabilities with the classification of autism, is a special type of small special class. So all the students in the class are students with IEPs with the classification of autism, and it's generally a ratio of 8 students. It has a special education teacher and a paraprofessional dedicated to the classroom. It is also for higher functioning students with autism, but as compared to the students in the ASD NEST program, the students in ASD Horizon may still need that additional educational support, but also support with their behavior. The program is based on principles of ABA or applied behavioral analysis that have been demonstrated to support behavior and learning for children with autism. You have to apply to these programs separately. We have a link later on in the presentation to where you can find the application. It's You can apply now for a seat in kindergarten. You do not have to wait for your child's IEP meeting. Some parts of the application ask for different evaluation results. You can submit it and let the DO know that your child is turning 5, and so they can complete some of those evaluations as part of this transition year, this transition process. So you do not have to wait to apply to those programs. Another specialized program is ACEs. This is for children classified as having an intellectual disability. ACEs is a small specialized class for all students classified as having an intellectual disability, really focused on helping them develop different types of life skills. Then there's the IREAD program. This is a fairly new specialized program that focuses on early childhood literacy. It's for students with a disability that affects their ability to read. It's a special type of ICT or integrated class. So there's a general education teacher, a special education teacher, but there's also a teacher who's an expert in literacy or a literacy coach that works alongside the other 2 teachers and the students in the classroom with the focus on really developing a child's ability to read. For IREAD, there is also, and for ACEs, there is also a separate application process. You can apply, you can find the application on the DOE website. I will give you the link to that website before the end of this presentation so that you have it and can reach out to the programs if you're interested in them. For the most part, all of these programs are fairly competitive, and I will just reemphasize that for bilingual ICT and special class, there's not a separate application process. It is based on your child's needs, something that you can and should discuss at your child's IEP meeting if it would benefit your child. And if it is recommended for your child, the DOE is responsible for identifying a school that has those programs. Okay, moving on to the AIMS program. As opposed to the programs on the other slide, the AIMS program is available in some, but not all DOE specialized schools. So in some, but not all District 75 programs. Unlike the, CNES and Horizon program, the AIMS program focuses on serving children with more diagnosis of autism or classification of autism with more significant needs. It is the classroom ratio is 6 students, a special education teacher, a speech therapy teacher who is dedicated to working with the children every day of the week, and a classroom paraprofessional. The program also uses principles of ABA, applied behavioral analysis. It also has verbal behavior to really be supportive, really intensive supports for students. There is an application that you must complete in order to be considered for the AIMS program. The AIMS it's relatively new and it's become incredibly popular. And again, every year they receive more applications and they have spots. If it's something that you're interested in, you can apply now, even knowing that you do not have all the evaluations or results to complete the application. The DOE understands that your child is transitioning to kindergarten and will take that into account. I've added barrier-free and accessible schools. This isn't a specific type of program, but to highlight, as one of the questions already noted, not all schools are accessible schools. The DOE classifies schools as not accessible, fully accessible, or partially accessible. If your child needs a partially or fully accessible school, it is something that you can indicate both when you apply to kindergarten, but also discuss at your child's kindergarten IEP meeting what specific needs your child has or accommodations your child has in order to navigate a school environment safely. So, if stairs are a problem for any number of reasons, let the DOE know that your child cannot safely navigate stairs. This is something that the DOE should take into consideration. And if any school that they offer you cannot meet your child's needs, you can request either accommodations or placement at a different school. So just flagging that as something else to keep in mind throughout the IEP process. Okay, and we'll take a pause to see if there are additional questions. Okay, so one question is, my child is nonverbal and definitely not attending a community school and has many challenges. Do I still register for kindergarten in my zoned school district? We recommend that families apply to DOE schools through the DOE's kindergarten admissions process. I'm guessing this is what it's referring to. So even if you believe, and part of the reason is that the kindergarten admissions process ends, or the application deadline is in January, and your child's IEP meeting will not be taking place until, potentially March or April. And so because the majority of students can be served in DOE non-specialized schools, really recommend that you apply just so you have the ability to express your preference if your child was to attend a non-specialized school. We understand that for some children, the IEP recommendation will be for a specialized school, be that District 75, be that NPS. In that case, your child will attend the District 75 or NPS, regardless of whether you applied to kindergarten, right? You can always turn down the DOE placement offer and then accept the District 75 placement, the specialized program placement, or the NPS placement that is made for your child. So applying to kindergarten doesn't limit any of those other programs for being considered for your child. If you're very confident that a non-specialized school would not be appropriate for your child, you can consider applying to just one or two. I'm spending minimal time on it, but just enough to express any preference that you may have in the event that there is a different recommendation made. You're not required to complete the kindergarten application process. It is just something that we encourage families to do, because for most students, they can and will be served in their zone school or in a non-specialized school. There's a question of, based on an IEP, can a student receive ABA services? ABA services are not, and we'll get to different service recommendations actually next. ABA services are not recommended on a child's IEP. Similarly, they're usually not recommended, or they're not recommended on a preschool IEP. They're not recommended on school-aged IEPs. But if your child needs ABA services in order to make educational progress, to make meaningful progress, then you can explore different ways of getting similar services recommended on your child's IEP. For example, whether a special education teacher support services, a SETS provider, can work with your child one-on-one on more intensive support. That teacher may have experience using ABA and can work using ABA methodologies with your child. Sometimes in order to secure that service, you may have to file an impartial hearing. In that case, we do recommend that you consult with an attorney. And just because the DOE doesn't typically recommend something doesn't mean that you can't request it or find ways to get the service, have the service delivered for your child. One other question, can you request for a new DOE representative if you disagree or dislike how the current representative is handling your child's IEP? And they would like the question answered live, so I'm answering it live. Generally, no, generally you can't just request another DOE district representative. If you have specific reasons for why that district representative is not working well with you or not appropriately handling your child's case, then I do recommend that you reach out to the DOE central office, to their Turning 5 inbox, and explain your concerns with the DOE district representative, the role that they're playing, and request someone new to work with your child. Based on a case-by-case decision, you may be able to get a new district representative, but do recommend that you give specific reasons for why you have concerns or not, why that person isn't working well for you and your child. Because generally, if you just say, I would like someone else, it's very likely that that request will be denied. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so different supports and services available. Many of these are the same, or supports and services that you may be familiar with based on your child's preschool recommendations. So it includes assistive technology. Even though it has the term technology, it doesn't mean it has to be high tech. It's any piece of equipment, any product or system that's used to increase, maintain, or improve your child's functional capabilities. It's most commonly we see recommended for children who need support with communication that receive different types of communication devices. That device can range from having a tablet with different programs where the child can point to indicate different images or to have it produce different sounds. But there are also low-tech ways of, picture boards and different kind of materials, hands-on materials that the child can use to communicate their want or need for different items. Paraprofessionals, it's just an additional adult, can be one-on-one to work specifically for your child for the full day, for parts of the day, to support with toileting, to support with health needs, or to support with behavioral needs. Very common recommendations: occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, counseling. Many of you are likely familiar with that. One that I've referenced a couple of times already, special education teacher support services, or SETS. That's similar to a SEAT for preschool. So again, a special education teacher that can work either one-on-one or in a small group with a child for parts of the day or several times a week. That may be one way to get ABA therapy for a child, particularly if it's needed after school. Some things that are less familiar is a behavioral intervention plan. This is a plan that's developed with your child's school following a functional behavioral assessment that's used to identify challenging behaviors that your child is displaying and the reason for those challenging behaviors, right? So really trying to understand the context. When are these behaviors happening? What's going on beforehand? What's happening after? Is there a reason that they keep reoccurring? The BIP then addresses how we're going to limit those behaviors, what changes we're going to make in the classroom, or what changes are the teachers going to take to create a different setting so those challenging behaviors or negative behaviors aren't happening or not happening as frequently. Finally, another support and service is specialized transportation. I always like to flag for families for preschool, any child attending a special class or a SCIS class, an integrated class, automatically has specialized transportation recommended on their IEP. That is not the case for kindergarten. In order to get specialized transportation recommended, it has to be based on an individual student, the individual student's need. It's not automatic based on their placement. So do recommend that you discuss at the IEP meeting reasons that if your child needs specialized transportation, discuss at the IEP meeting those needs. For example, if your child needs behavioral support, social emotional support, and that's one of the reasons that they need that door-to-door busing, because either the yellow bus route or public transportation wouldn't be a safe and appropriate option for your child. And obviously, if there are any medical needs or medical accommodations that your child may need related to any of these programs or services, get that documentation prepared before the IEP meeting so that you can discuss those needs at the meeting. These services are available in any school setting, in any different program setting. So a child in general education can have an AT device. A child in a District 75 6-to-1-to-1 can have an AT device. Similarly, the related services can be provided in any class setting. So just keep in mind that there aren't those types of limitations. Okay, so following the IEP meeting, so you discussed the program, you discussed the services, you discussed goals, you created an IEP, and hopefully you're satisfied with the IEP. Following the meeting, you'll receive some documents. The first that you should receive is a copy of your child's IEP. You should receive that within 10 days of the IEP meeting. At the very end of the IEP meeting, if the full IEP isn't available, we do recommend that you ask for a copy of the program and service recommendation page. Either have that emailed, most likely have that emailed to you, fast if that's an option, or if there's another way of getting that to you, just so that you leave the meeting with an understanding of what has been recommended and to ensure that there aren't any changes being made after the meeting. So that's the day of the IEP meeting, you ask for that. Possibly 10 days later, you get a copy of the IEP. Shortly after that, you should also get a prior written notice. We have an example of this on the screen, the white page. This is basically a summary of your child's IEP. Nothing on here should be a surprise. It should list the program and the services that were recommended at the meeting, and also an explanation of what was reviewed or the reasons why that recommendation was made. So for example, it should list a copy of all the evaluations or progress reports that were reviewed and considered in recommending your child's the different program and services for your child. Then by June 15th, you will get another prior written notice. This one will be on green paper and is also called a school location letter. Similar to the PWN or the prior written notice, the school location letter will also summarize the program and services that were discussed at the IEP meeting and recommended for your child. But it'll also include the name of the specific school that the DOE has identified that will be providing your child with a classroom and special education supports and services. If your child's IEP recommends a non-specialized school, so if it recommends general education with supports and services, if it recommends an ICT class, or if it recommends a special class in a non-specialized school, then the letter listed on this green school location letter should be the same one that made you a kindergarten placement offer. And that's kind of where the two processes come together, the kindergarten application process and developing the kindergarten IEP. If your child's IEP recommends a District 75 program or an NPS placement, this green school location letter will not list the letter that made you a kindergarten offer. It will identify the District 75 school or other school program that will be serving your child in September. We recommend that when you get this letter, you contact the school, particularly if the letter recommends a non-specialized school or a 12-to-1-to-1 program in a non-specialized school, to ensure that they will have the program and services that your child needs for September. If the school says that they do not, we recommend that you contact the DOE right away. You can contact Advocates for Children to alert them so that either the school can work on opening that special class placement or start discussing with you different accommodations that may be necessary, or so that the DOE can look for a new kindergarten placement for your child. Okay. In addition to the prior written notice and the green school location letter, this is a quick summary of some other documents that you should look out for and monitor your mail this year. The welcome packet, which you should have already received. If you haven't, it's not crucial information or there is specific information that you're missing out on, but do recommend that you reach out again to your CPSC administrator for your child's preschool program, just to let them know, just to make sure the DOE has the correct address for you, because you do want to make sure you're getting the following more case-specific information, including the notice of referral. For some families, it'll be on blue paper. For the majority, it'll be on white. That you will start receiving near the end of December and later throughout the school year. This is a letter that has the information for your DOE district representative. You can contact the district representative to discuss evaluations and different steps that you want to take before your child's IEP meeting. Your child's district representative should also be reaching out to you. And so if the district representative contacts you and you've never gotten the notice of referral, also tell that person that you want to double check the address that the DOE has for you to make sure that they have the correct contact information. including if you want information sent by email, you can give that person consent to send you files electronically. There is a notice of case reassignment. This is usually printed on pink paper, and it is only if a case is reassigned, only if the DOE district representative is changing. The most common reason that this happens is if a child's case is first assigned to one school and one district representative, but then that child's zone school requests permission to host the IEP meeting, conduct the IEP meeting. The case may be reassigned to the zone school because for many families, they are more likely to attend the zone school, and so gives an opportunity to start forming that relationship with that school staff. Then following the IEP meeting, again, you should receive a copy of the IEP and the prior written notice, which is a summary of the program and service recommended at the meeting. By June 15th, you should receive a green school location letter that will include the specific school that will be working with your child starting September 2022. For some families, they will also receive a purple letter, which is a specialized program acceptance letter. This is only if a child is accepted into one of the specialized programs, including ASD+, Horizon, ACES, iRead, and the other programs that we mentioned in that section. Okay. Just a recap, if you aren't getting mail, contact your CPSC administrator or community coordinator. This is a link where you can get their email addresses. You should also tell your DOE district representative when they called you. Obviously, if you get the letter saying who your district representative is and you've gotten mail, but if you do not get anything in writing, they should proactively be contacting you and you can let them know. You can also request documents by email, share your email address, sign a consent form, present it to the DOE representative. The DOE will also be giving the option for families to create New York City Schools account this year. That's something that you will receive by mail with information with the code and other things to create an account. And again, you can work with your DOE district representative once someone is assigned to work with you to make sure you are getting everything by mail and by email as well. Communication is very important, so I want to highlight for you that there is a right to translation and interpretation. Translation refers to written documents, so letters, forms, meeting notices, including special education documents like the IEP, the mailings that I identified, the notice of referral, the prior written notice, the school location letter. You have a right to have those documents in your language. If things are not coming in your language, if you need an interpreter or translation, first discuss it with your DOE representative. And then if there are any ongoing issues, you can contact this telephone number and this email address to request support with translation and interpretation. Interpretation refers to spoken language support, including in parent-teacher conferences, parent association meetings, special education meetings like the IEP meeting itself, and your communications with the DOE district representative. The most common languages that the DOE will usually provide translation and interpretation for, as well as the languages where there are templates and you can get translation on the website, are in Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, French, Haitian Creole, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Urdu, but that's not exclusive. If you speak another language not listed here, the DOE has the capacity to offer translation and interpretation to over 200 languages, excuse me, and you should contact the complaint line and the inbox if you need something specific in your language. Okay, I will pause again for questions, and I recognize that we are running out of time, but we are almost there. Okay, questions that I'm seeing are not currently relevant to the kindergarten IEP or process, so we'll keep going just for time management, just to get more information to everyone, and if we have time at the end, we'll revisit this. Okay, so quick survey. You should apply to schools after the DOE holds your child's kindergarten IEP meeting. This is a true or false. Going to launch the poll. And I'll be a little bit faster with this one. I'll only give you guys 30 seconds. Okay, the majority of you answered false. That is correct. You should not wait until after your child's kindergarten IEP meeting to apply to schools. Most schools have an application deadline before IEP meetings are even scheduled. So for example, for DOE non-specialized schools, the application deadline is in January. Most charter schools, the applications are due by April 1st. So that means for the majority of schools, the applications are due before your child's IEP meeting is even scheduled. And so it would be too late to apply to those schools if you wait until after the kindergarten IEP meeting. Again, the DOE has said that all of their non-specialized schools offer the same program and services, same special education programs and services as and so it's not necessary to take that into consideration when you're applying to different schools, and suggest that you consider other factors like the school that a sibling attends, schools that are closer to your home, close to different public transportation, or offer different programs that you may be interested in. And as I mentioned, we'll quickly go over the kindergarten admissions process. We do have another webinar that's dedicated just to this process. And so do recommend that you sign up for that webinar if you have questions and want information on how to decide which schools to apply to, where to get more information about schools, and logistics about the application. Right now, the DOE has not yet launched the application. We do not have the specific application dates, but it is typically available from mid-December through January. Once the application is live, there are 3 main ways to apply. One is by going to myschools.nyc. This is just a quick screenshot of what that website looks like. This is My Schools. You can translate My Schools into those top 10 languages. In addition to being where you can apply to schools, My Schools also has an online directory. You can create an account for a kindergarten student starting now, or for a child born in 2017. You can create an account now to start looking at different kindergarten options. And that way, once the application launches, you'll already be ready and set to apply to those schools. Through the kindergarten application process, you can apply to up to 12 schools, and we recommend that you do that based on your order of preference. So the school that you like the most, you rank as number 1. Your least favorite, you may rank closer to 12. You don't have to apply to 12. You can apply to 1 to 2. You don't have to apply to any, but do recommend that you apply to at least a couple. In addition to being able to apply online, you can apply by phone by calling the DOE Office of Student Enrollment at 718-935-2009. You can also apply in person on paper at a Family Welcome Center. Because of the pandemic, their capacity is limited, so do recommend that you first contact the Family Welcome Center to schedule an in-person appointment. This is a link, and again, you'll be receiving a copy of these slides with the hyperlinks. With the email addresses and the physical address where the Family Welcome Centers are located. They are various offices throughout the city. Every borough has at least 1 Family Welcome Center. And the application dates, please monitor them. They will be posted on My Schools, especially if you create an account beforehand. And will also be available on the DOE's kindergarten website, schools.nyc.gov/kindergarten. Right now, they have an option for you to put in your information if you want an email or a text once the application launches. So that's something that you can do to kind of stay, get those alerts from the DOE. A quick reminder for families going through the kindergarten IEP process and the kindergarten admissions process to check your school location letter. You will get, that's the green letter you'll receive by June 15th to make sure that that school has the IEP program and services that your child needs. Again, we see this the most with students for kindergarten whose IEP recommends a special class in a non-specialized school, or the 12 to 1-to-1. So really encourage you to reach out to the school to make sure that they can meet your child's needs. And if they can't, please contact us. Some tips for, if there's disagreement, or if there is, you need additional supports after the IEP meeting. First, we recommend that you try to resolve any disagreement with the DOE representative who's assigned to your child's case. If that representative is, and again, this is the person who'll be listed on the notice of referral that you receive later this winter, either later this month or in January. If that person is not helpful, you can contact the DOE Special Education Office. This is the inbox that I had mentioned, is there to support you with all your child's transition to kindergarten needs. It's turning5@schools.nyc.gov. You can copy us at Advocates for Children, at kindergarten@afc.org. That helps us monitor to see if there are any trends or what challenges families are experiencing. You can also call the DOE Special Education Hotline at 718-935-2007. If your concern is more about the kindergarten application itself, we recommend that you contact the DOE Office of Student Enrollment at this email address, esenrollment, or at the telephone number 718-935-2009. This is also the telephone number you can call to apply to schools. Finally, if you can't resolve the dispute or disagreement with the DOE through your district representative or the different offices in the Department of Education, if it is regarding a special education need, you can request mediation, file an impartial hearing, or file a formal complaint. For mediation, we'll just note that both parties have to agree. So you have to agree and the Department of Education has to agree. It is a by agreement, and also any outcome from mediation is also by agreement. So there is a mediator, there's a third party person there to help you reach a consensus and see if the issue can be resolved. That's different from an impartial hearing, which is like a trial. It is a little bit more adversarial. We do recommend for impartial hearings that you seek advice from an attorney or have an attorney represent you at the hearing. A hearing is overseen by a hearing officer who will issue a decision and an order. So it is not based on agreement or consent of the parties. And finally, you can file a formal complaint. We have more information about how to do that in our Turning 5 guide that you will receive by email following this presentation. The complaint is not always a way to receive, to get like immediate results for a service or program for your child. Usually use that more to notify the city and the state about different concerns that you've had with your child's special education services. Okay. Some additional resources for special education specifically. Recommend that you review AFC's Turning 5 guide. You'll receive a link to our updated guide following the presentation. Copies are also available on our website, including copies in different languages. Sometimes there is a delay for us to be able to post the translations, but they will be available in Spanish, Chinese, Bengali, and Arabic, in addition to English. The DOE also has resources, including a website dedicated to the transition. You can also, from that website, request the DOE's Kindergarten Orientation Guide, which is their guide on the transition from preschool to kindergarten for children with disabilities. You can get more information on the DOE website on different District 75 programs. This is the link, as well as those specialized programs, including ASD Nest, Horizon, AIMS program, iRead, ACES, on the DOE website. This link will also include the application for those programs. For AIMS, because it's located in District 75 programs, you'll find more information using the District 75 link. The DOE is hosting similar workshops and webinars to this one that we're presenting for you today, you can watch one of the pre-recorded sessions on the DOE website, or you can sign up for one of the live sessions. As you can see here, there are still 4 sessions left, including the next one coming up on December 7th, 9th, 25th, and 27th. For the application, some additional resources, AFC's Kindergarten Admissions Guide, that goes over the process for applying to DOE schools with extra information as well on charter schools. The DOE also has resources including My Schools with the online directory. They have a kindergarten website where you can learn more about admissions priorities and how the process works. The DOE is conducting webinars about admissions. You can find more information on their website, and you can also find information or the DOE's admissions guide. This isn't a directory, it doesn't have school-specific information, but it does give an overview of the application process and how admission decisions are made. So different orders of priority for making school placement offers. An additional resource is contacting the DOE Family Welcome Centers. As I said, they're located in all 5 boroughs and offer additional support in applying to schools. Okay, so that was quite a bit. Thank you for making it this far, for sticking with us despite us running a bit late. We'll be doing one final poll, or really a survey, asking for your feedback on how the presentation went. Please let us know if it was easy to understand, if you learned something new. It helps us be able to tailor our workshops going forward to make sure that the information we're giving is relevant and easy to understand. As a reminder, if you want more information about the application process, we do have a kindergarten admissions webinar that we will be doing throughout December and January. We also have those Q&A sessions, including one session this Friday, I believe at noon, that you can sign up for, especially if any of your questions did not get answered today. And as this final slide says, you can continue to contact us through our helpline and also through our info@advocatesforchildren.org inbox with any questions, and we'll provide information. If somebody doesn't answer the helpline, please leave a voicemail. We make every effort to get back to families within a couple of days. And while you are completing the survey, I'm just gonna double check the Q&A to see if there are any outstanding questions. I'm not seeing anything new. So thank you again for participating, and please complete our survey. We'll keep it up here for another couple of minutes. And as a final reminder, you'll receive an email from us within a couple of days with a copy of these slides, with a link to the recording for this webinar that, again, you can either rewatch or share with others. It'll also include links to our website where you can find all the relevant guides, including our Turning 5 guide, our kindergarten admissions guide, and also other AFC guides that are relevant to the process. So for example, there's a guide on the rights of students with disabilities in charter schools, because we do recognize that that is kind of increasing in popularity for families to explore charter schools as an option. There's also information specific to English language learners, obviously information specific to students with disabilities, things to consider when you are visiting schools, including District 75 placements. So there's a lot of resources. It's a lot of material that you will receive. You don't have to review it all. I would recommend, if you're going to pick one document to review, that you focus on the Turning 5 guide. because it is the most detailed and comprehensive in supporting you in preparing for the kindergarten IEP or kindergarten IEP meeting and understanding what programs and services are available. Do you see one more question in the Q&A? Oh, I guess it was just answered because I lost it, but it was whether any particular evaluation is needed for the ASD programs, and I believe referring to ASD Nest and Horizon. You can complete the application now, even without having any evaluations done for your child. What will be considered, obviously, if it's your child has the autism diagnosis or receives an autism classification, because the programs are specific to children who have autism. For the other evaluations needed or results, the DOE can and should work with you to conduct those evaluations if your child is being considered for the programs. So especially for families who are looking for those kindergarten seats, the DOE is already going to be involved in the, P5 or turning 5 kindergarten IEP evaluations and reviewing progress reports. So typically do those, at the same time. If you submit the application now, they will work with your child's IEP team, with the district representative, to make sure they're getting all the information they need to have your child considered for the program. They should not be asking you to seek any type of private evaluations or independent evaluations in order to see if your child's a good fit. If that is happening, please contact our helpline. Okay, it looks like everyone here has completed the survey, so thank you. Looking forward to having you join us at the Q&A if you have additional questions or at one of our other webinars. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope that you feel more confident about going into your child's IEP meeting and you feel that you understand the process more now. So yeah, wishing you good luck and happy holidays. Take care.